wants to do the intro? I'll do the intro.
Go ahead.
Welcome to episode 4 of Inside the Toy Box. We are... sound effects. We are going to be talking about Twinkies today. Twinkies and game design. They somehow go together. Deliciously, I might add. I'm Ryan. As always, I'm joined by...
Rob Lockhart.
And...
Keep one hung.
So, Rob, you came to me with this thing. I've never heard of it before. It's the Bad Twinkie database?
Yes.
Am I getting that right?
Bad game designer, no Twinkie. So it's called the no Twinkie database for short. And it's basically something that everyone encounters right away if they Google like game design or something. That's like one of the first things that comes up. So I think every person who's like tried to think about game design has read this database.
Yeah, it's an ongoing database. I think Ernst Adams writes it, and he
Yep.
puts out, I think, a new one every year or so, or something like that. So it's a gradually growing database.
So yeah, I did go through a couple of them, and since I'm not a game designer, kind of went over my head a little bit. So hopefully we'll.
I doubt that.
What do they mean by giant boulders?
Most of these things are like sent in by players. That's how he's reminded of the terrible, bad decisions that designers make. Because sometimes to other designers it seems perfectly logical.
How do I reach these keys?
Yeah, I think when we start going through them, basically you'll hear about it and be like, oh, that's totally happened to me before, and I hate it.
Well, let's jump into it. Keewan, what's one that you...
Well, the one that me and Rob were talking about just a second ago was birds that carry swords. I really like this one.
Yeah.
Because it drives me absolutely nuts.
It's basically that is a placeholder name for the phenomenon of ridiculous drops. Mm-hmm. So if you kill a chicken and it drops coins, like why did that chicken have coins? Like you...
So like every RPG ever, essentially.
Basically, yeah. And it has become a convention. I think that's why people get away with it. But if you think about it for half a second, it's like...
It's utterly ridiculous. Chickens don't have pockets. Come on.
Unless you're a pelican, in which case your beak is a multi-purpose tool.
This is true. But how do you fly with all that gold in your beak? It's just ridiculous.
But don't you think, like, okay, let's say that you totally go for the very strict interpretation of, well, okay, you get a feather on a bird. Mm-hmm. Don't you think that destroys a little bit of the fun of a video game?
Or chicken meat or something? Like, there's a lot of things that chickens carry.
Right, I suppose. But you get the gold, and you get the gold to buy swords, and you trade up the swords to get an enchanted sword. I mean, doesn't that take away from some of the fun of games a little bit, though? I mean, in this case.
I think it's part of a mechanic, but the reason that we follow the mechanic is just because other people have done it, right? You don't necessarily have to follow the mechanic to make it work.
I think it's more excusable in some other cases where you can still have that grind and get like coins or whatever from it. But so like in the Zelda games, they're pots. If you go into people's houses and smash all their crockery, you are rewarded with a small number of coins. And it's kind of makes sense that they would have coins in their crockery. Maybe. I don't know. They're kind of like water jugs.
It's the Zelda way of hiding money under your mattress.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can still make the mechanic work. It's just that if you stop and think about it sometimes, it completely removes you from that sense of immersion, right? Like, this chicken should not be carrying like a 10-pound, like, two-handed broadsword, right? That's just ridiculous if you think about it for 1 second. So yes, I mean, maybe the chicken has feathers you can sell or meat you can cook. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. Let's just try to stay away from the completely like game breaking.
Yeah, that's what they do in Glitch too. They have like there are weird. I mean, there are still weird things because Glitch is like a kind of a surrealistic game. But but what is it? If you hug a pig, it gives you its meat or something like that. Yeah.
Don't ever hug me.
And
oh wow! We find the line each time in these podcasts,
and we just edge right up to it,
right.
peek over.
I'm missing a chunk of flesh. What?
And the reverse side of that same Twinkie denial condition that they talk about is bad guys with vanishing weapons. So they've been like spraying bullets at you for a while, and you hit them, they fall down, and their gun disappears, and all the ammo disappears.
Now that is something that has bugged me.
Yeah,
totally. Or they have like this awesome weapon, and
exactly.
you pick it up.
That's exactly the one I'm thinking about.
You know what? One game did that really well. Way of the Samurai for PlayStation 2.
I never played it.
It's essentially a game where you're given the choice to do everything. It's like some people talk about Morrowind as like you can
become a weaver.
No, okay. You can't become a weaver. But what you can do though, and this is pretty cool, is you can beat the game in 2 minutes. You watch the opening intro, and then you walk the other direction and just hit yes when it says, "Do you want to leave this town and all of its problems?"
That's great.
However, the cool thing is anybody you kill in that game, you get their sword.
Yeah.
So even like the end boss, there's like a 3-frame window.
They do that in the Wii sword fighting game too. What is that called? Red Steel.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, so it's just a really fast. You can kill just about anybody in that, and then that kills the storyline. And so yeah, that's what it sounded like. A good implementation of getting the person's weapon would be Way of the Samurai.
I mean, I thought Halo, the original Halo, did this very well, and the way they balanced it was that you could only carry 2 weapons, and the more powerful ones had a limited supply of ammo. So even though I killed a guy with like a fuel rod cannon, that fuel rod cannon only had like 10 shots in it, and I would eventually drop it for a better gun. So it didn't break me out of the atmospheric part of the game, but at the same time it didn't ruin the game by letting me have like a super powerful weapon.
It's also not like linearly better to have a more powerful weapon in Halo. Like,
that's true.
Sometimes you don't want to have like the super powerful weapon because you can hurt yourself or your teammates or whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I mean, if you want to point an example of it done right, I think Halo did a great job of it.
But I think a lot of RPGs fall into the trap where, if you kill a boss, you get your 50 gold, like a magic cloth, and whatever awesome weapon
which
they
you
were
never saw on the guide. I never used the magic cloth.
Right. Yeah, but whatever weapon they were annihilating you with just disappears, gone forever.
Yes. The gods can't let it fall into the wrong hands.
So, Rob, you have some notes, actually, of some good ones that other no Twinkie database entries here.
Well, I think the first one I ever read is really funny, and it's just this story where Ernest Adams was playing like an Indiana Jones game, and he was stuck in the first level and didn't know how to get out, and it turned out the solution was to move like a giant boulder, like 3 times the size of Indy, and there was no way you could have thought of that. So just like solutions to puzzles being completely counter to common sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think he goes into like the math of it, right? Like this block of stone ends up weighing like 2.5 tons or something like that. And there's no way, it's perfect.
And you're supposed to pull it,
right?
Not push it.
Hidden ball bearings,
right? How do you pull this thing when it has no handles? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Actually, that should be its own Twinkie denial condition. Pulling things that have no handles, like just flat things, you have to pull all the time in games.
Zelda.
I just had to do it in what's it called? The Magic Marker, Max and the Magic Marker game for iOS.
Oh, yeah. Scribblenauts.
No, not Scribblenauts.
What?
I think it's called Max and the Magic Marker, and it's just like this game where you can pause sometimes and draw shapes that you get to use in the game. They just become rigid bodies, and they let you pull things around, and it's not clear sometimes how you're pulling them at all.
I guess my thing on this Twinkie denial condition, can anyone point to a good example of like when you had to like pull something and it was actually fun? Because like this always feels like, okay, I've killed the room, I've killed all the enemies in the room, right? I'm stuck there, I'm trying to figure out what to do next, and I have to pull this stupid, crate like half a mile. to just go on to the next extreme. I think it's dumb.
Well, sometimes you have to pull things to get the room into the arrangement that you need to solve a puzzle, or like floor buttons is its own thing, which is kind of weird. That floor buttons are so ubiquitous in games when they just don't exist.
It's true.
Floor buttons. I want to see like how that's all wired up in these ancient dungeons too. Floor buttons.
I mean, it's completely impractical, right? Like,
Spring
why would you have like a
the
light?
Iron Age? Like, how do you make springs that will last this long? But yeah, it's just so that they don't have to add another mechanic. So I admire that about it. Actually, it's like it's using every part of the buffalo in a way. Like instead of adding like a button that you use on the controller to interact with objects or to press buttons, you just like put floor buttons and then you can move things onto them.
I guess for me, like, I've just never had a fun time pulling crates. It's always something that always feels like muck up after I'm already done with the fun part. So,
well, I think it's just a matter of pacing sometimes in games, like in Zelda. Classic
I was just
crate
thinking
pushing.
of Twilight Princess.
Yep.
How, as a wolf, you often have to like pull crates or boulders or whatever around, and it's fun enough.
Right. Yeah, but I think it creates those like peaks and valleys in like a gameplay. Thinking about it in terms of a story. So you like the highs are the action fighting, and then like the more lulls, which are fine. They don't make it boring.
True.
Overall, but the pushing things is usually what I consider a different section to the game.
yeah.
You're probably right, though. There's a lot of cases where...
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like filler to me sometimes, so that's why I would try to avoid it. But, maybe some people, that's what they live for, right? Oh, man, I can't wait to see what I can pull back.
I can't wait to finish killing all these people so I can get to the next door puzzle.
If anybody who's listening to this can point to a game where that's the case, I'll send them a Squishy's Revenge t-shirt.
Yes.
Yeah,
Seriously.
we'd love to hear it.
Yes, I'd love to know a part of a game where that's the case.
One other condition I wanted to get to was amnesia, because it's just like overused just in general in our culture. And I know exactly the reason, because we went over this again and again in film school, which is that you have to have some kind of excuse to give exposition about the story. And if your character can't remember everything, then everyone will explain things to them again, and then the player will get filled in. It's not like you show up to some place and somebody says, "You know how to work this machine. You've been doing it your whole life, so go ahead." There's no opportunity for a tutorial there. But if you have amnesia, you might say, like, "You don't remember? Oh, goodness. Well, let me show you." And then you go through the tutorial.
So, as kind of a corollary onto that, I hate how, like, every time I'm playing new Modern Warfare, I'm always the new recruit again. Even though I'm the same guy who just saved the world, they're like, "All right, we're putting you back in boot camp. Let's see what you can do." I'm like, I just saved the world. But seriously, I
don't
think...
have to prove myself again. In fact, there should be a level at the end where they just like women feed you grapes and things. Like you're just extolled as the greatest person ever, and you retire and you like go on a speaking tour through the U.S. and things like Sully Sullivan.
All memoir.
Those would be one heck of a QuickTime event.
Yes, rabble-rousing QuickTime events.
But seriously, like I think there should be some option where I can say, are you a new recruit? Are you a hardened vet? And so I can just press the hardened vet button, and it skips all the drill instructor on the first day stuff, and I can go right into maybe a more challenging version of they'll just show me what the new mechanics are. They don't have to walk me through aiming down the iron sights, throwing a grenade. I mean, I've done this 4,000 times in the last game. Come on.
I think the original Modern Warfare did that in a pretty interesting way, where you had to run through the obstacle course. Mm-hmm. Like that was fun. That was a game in of itself because you could retry to get a better time.
That's true, but they did make you go through the shooting down the range first,
right?
Before you did the obstacle course. I actually really enjoyed those obstacle courses. courses.
I think that could have been the tutorial.
Yeah, I agree.
That could have been the mobile version of the game. They should have just had they should have released actually a month before the main game came out, a mobile app where it was just the obstacle courses, so you could get up to speed and be ready when the actual game came out.
I think I was still rocking an old Nokia phone at the time, though. I could play Snake. So far we've come.
Press 4 button to kill terrorists. Okay.
That had actually been kind of funny, those old multi-user dungeon type interfaces.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they could. Well, yeah. I guess I didn't have a sense of the timeline there. they could have done it as a downloadable,
right? Well, there were still mobile games back then. It was just you had to have a really cool phone, which had color, I think, at the time. I don't know. I always had crappy phones. But okay, so Amnesia. I forget about Amnesia in games. That's basically. I think you can apply that also to losing your abilities, in every God of War game. Mm-hmm. There's always some event that triggers you losing your abilities to get all of your stuff back. I think that's kind of closely related to having amnesia, not remembering who you are.
Mm-hmm. I think losing all your stuff is more about recycling content, though. It's you get more gameplay hours if you have to.
I guess, what do we think of that mechanic, right? Because it's kind of the thing where you kind of give the players a taste, right? So oh yeah, this is awesome. And then you take it all away, so they're kind of oh, I want to really get that back. Is that a good mechanic? Is that something that maybe draws players back in, or is it more of I'm really disappointed I lost all these cool powers kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always in favor of carrots. That's one of the 101 kind of games.
Right, so that could be considered a carrot, right?
Yeah.
Where you show all the cool stuff and you take it away, so you have to kind of earn it back.
Uh-huh. But I'm sure there are, that might be a personality thing where some people are just well, that's a good place to stop. I lost all my stuff. Well, there we go.
It's too much work. Forget this.
Now, the new Batman, they didn't do that to an extent. Mm-hmm. So you actually start off without any abilities, essentially, and then you call in a drop from Alfred, and he gives you all your stuff you had at the end of Arkham Asylum.
Oh,
and then you just keep getting new abilities on top of that, which I thought was actually kind of interesting because I didn't feel like I had to retread old ground to get to the cool new stuff.
As a game designer, my personal rule is I try not to punish players for things they didn't do right. So for me, taking away all your stuff when you really didn't do anything wrong is kind of a weird and arbitrary punishment. I like more where you have these scenarios where your character gets captured and loses his gear, but you can get it back at some point. I think that's the way.
Doom was it that they did that?
I think there's a Doom, and I know it happened in the first Deus Ex 2. Mm-hmm. But I like that because it creates a different dynamic where you're I have to play in a different style for a while, and then I can get all my gear back and resume off where I was. Mm-hmm. So I like that mechanic better than I'm going to just arbitrarily take all your powers kind of deal.
That actually segues perfectly into another one of the no Twinkie conditions.
I love when that happens. It's the best.
There's one that's basically about weird, pointless mini-game style things, levels where the mechanic of play is totally different and it's just filler, basically. They might excuse it with some story, but for the most part, it's if you had an RPG where you have to drive race cars for a level.
Chrono Trigger.
Quick time events? Anyone?
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, I can understand though wanting the player to do something constantly. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of the hacking mini games in BioShock, where to get a control of a turret, you have to put all of stuff together. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can understand that, but
honestly, I felt that was more a core part of the game than an arbitrary minigame.
Right. So they do a very similar thing in Dead Space, where you have to complete circuits, and you also have to rivet boards in place. But at least you're sort of in the same. First of all, it doesn't take very long to fix one of these circuit boards. But you're at the time that you're doing that, zombies or like space zombies or whatever they are are still coming for you. So
I think it also depends on the way you tie it in. Like, I think BioShock did a good job because, like, when you played those puzzles, right, you could do stuff like you could freeze whatever you're trying to hack, and it would actually slow down the liquid. And then, obviously, if you successfully completed one of those puzzles, you got control of a turret or a camera or whatever, you're looking at. I think as long as you have a good kind of tie-in to your game, those things can work. But when they're as disconnected as, like, I think it was one of the Call of Duties where there's like random quick time events in there. It really takes the player out of the flow. So I think as long as they kind of have relevance to the rest of the game, they're okay. But if you're completely doing some completely arbitrary, I don't like that.
Like there's one racing level in Knights of the Old Republic.
That's right. Oh
gosh, yes.
It makes sense because you're like on a racing planet or whatever. Like people are into that here, and you have to win a race in order to get some information or an object. I can't remember from the main guy who's like in charge of the races. So it doesn't seem arbitrary, and it's only one level.
That's the thing. If that had been like every planet you had to like beat a race, I would have gotten really pissed off. Because it was just like the one planet, I just like, okay, I'll bear it through and just
either you make a racing game or
right. Star Wars Racers of the Old Republic.
They had what was it? There was an N64 pod racing.
Pod racing.
That was actually one of the better pieces of media based on the original this prequel trilogy.
Now I want to say that you could set it up so that you had two N64 controllers to control
your two engines.
Yes,
that's cool.
I think if I remember,
the arcade version had two throttles.
Yeah, gosh, I need to go look that up again. But that was pretty cool.
The arcade version was fun.
Are there any like arcades around anymore though? I know.
Dave & Buster's.
Well, I know, but I'm talking like other arcades,
like indie arcades.
I mean, I went to the movie theater to see Immortals last week, and they had the new Terminator game, which has the guns are actually like M4s. You can like slap the bottom of the magazine to reload. It's really cool.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so it was a blast to the past. I had a great time actually. So.
Well, when I was down to Union Station, you told me that there was an arcade there, and I asked around, and Renee did too, and everybody was like, "Oh no, that closed down."
Really?
Yeah.
But I was just there like a month ago.
Huh. You must have been there as it closed down, or I talked to like a bunch of people who had no idea.
They just wanted to get rid of 51, and they had like all those sort of they had, I can't remember if they had Police Trainer, but
Police Trainer.
That's one of my favorites.
It is. It's good. That is a lot of mini games in that one, though, right?
Mm-hmm. But they're all about shooting.
That is a game about mini games. So, we'll give them a Twinkie for that. It's okay.
It's like you can't penalize people for making WarioWare. I mean, it's a game about mini games.
Are there any other Twinkie?
Those are all the funny ones I was thinking of.
What are some of like the sad or depressing?
There's some more serious ones like failure to explain victory and loss conditions. That's like
totally
ultra stupid. It's not even.
It drives me nuts when you like play a RTS game and they don't tell you that one of the characters can't die during the mission.
Oh yeah, that's a classic.
And like right at the end, like you've almost beat the mission, and like the little stealth attack on the back of your base, and it kills one guy. You fail the whole thing.
Right.
I think I stopped playing the game because of that and never came back to it. It was just so frustrating.
So it's an escort mission that they don't tell you is an escort mission.
Right. They don't implicitly tell you that this guy cannot die, and then he dies and the mission fails.
Yeah, there goes hours of your life.
If you tell someone that you've here, play this game, the first thing they're going to ask you is like, how do you win?
Right.
So,
one thing that I ran into in playing the new Deus Ex was that hacking was sometimes like implicitly required to complete side missions, and I was building like a guns first character. So there was actually a period of time where I actually had to just run around the city and gain experience enough to get hacking, so I could hack a computer that had information that I needed for a side quest. It wasn't a main quest, so that was good. But I still was one of those guys that wanted to complete all the side quests, and I had to get my hacking up to complete the side quest. So that was one of those I didn't know that I needed it to achieve.
It's unfortunate when they don't tell you that you have to have a certain, like in an RPG style scenario, that certain attributes have to be leveled up. They give you complete freedom, and you exercise that freedom, and then they're like, no, you did it wrong.
Right. I mean, if you're gonna do that, like auto level me, or at least let me know. Give me the strong hint that you may want to put points into this, or you're gonna fail.
Let's see. Some of these a lot of these actually are just about bad programming, like AI that can see in the dark and knows where you are in the level and stuff like that. Just cheating AI, that's annoying. And teleporting non-player characters where like they're just too lazy to make the pathfinding work right, so they teleport them through a wall or something.
I think one of them was talking about like how many sounds you want to have for your enemies, and it's always like more than 3. Because I definitely ran into that where it's like really.
Actually, he outlines a whole algorithm for sounds. If you have to have more than 3, and it has to go where you randomly select one, and it gets removed from the list until there's one more. You save which one that is. You repopulate the list, and then you select it randomly again and make sure that it's not the previous one. Yeah. So he actually gives you like an explicit algorithm. This is how sounds are supposed to work.
I mean, I think it's something that's very valid for mobile games, right? Because, I mean, everyone's trying to ship with as few sounds as possible, but, like, after you play the game for the 10th time, you're like, oh, I never want to hear that sound effect again.
Yeah.
It's driving me crazy. And now I'm gonna take a chunk out of Rob.
One of these here I actually kind of dispute.
It says yes, there are a few I've disputed, yeah, for sure.
A switch in one room opens a door in another room a mile away. Now, I think that's only should only be denied a Twinkie if that is not told to you. Like you switch the switch and then nothing happens. That's
right.
That's dumb. But if you flip the switch and then you get a little like zoom in on the door across the way, or like
something,
a blinking icon on your map that says like this door is now open, then that's absolutely fine.
Yep.
I think it just kind of goes to like the whole foreshadowing thing. Mm-hmm. You know, if you kind of, your actions here affect something down the road, but you don't quite know what that is, I think that's kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. So yes, I would dispute that as well.
Yeah, we should add a collar into that.
So should we do one more here, and then we'll kind of wrap it up?
Sure.
I don't know. Yeah, there's.
We could probably do a whole another one of these on this.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a great list, but
one of them is there's actually two that are very similar, and they're just like you shouldn't have time limits on pure puzzle games, and also there are levels that you need a specific that there's a time limit on, and there's no like variable difficulty. So people who aren't as good with a joystick like myself might bang into walls and waste lots of valuable time, and that should be a no Twinkie condition, I think.
I agree. Yeah, I mean sometimes it's just you get to that one time level and you try at it for hours and hours and hours, and you finally say I give up. I'm not going to play this anymore. I think that has to do with testing too, right? Because as a developer, you get really good at whatever game you're building just because you played it so much. So your kind of your testing times are completely inaccurate when you write them down. So It may be something that you just need more testing to figure out a reasonable time.
Actual users to try out that level, people who've played through the beginning, so that they have some skills, but aren't haven't been playing it for months.
And then what we do in our games is we do the stars, right? So you can take as long as you want to.
Oh
no! No Twinkie.
I'll leave that on the floor because it can't fall any further.
But yeah, you can take as long as you want. You'll still go to the next level, but you just will get less stars for it. So if you want to go back and redo it for stars, and you always have that option.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, I think we've covered a lot of no Twinkie conditions.
Yes.
So this week from us on the Nook Color / Nook tablet, that's out now.
Yeah, that's right.
Connection. Yep. And that's kind of like a pipe dream based game where you connect the 2 points of light, and you got to do that a number of times to get a ton of points to be the champion of the world.
Mm-hmm. Connecting points of light.
The connecting points of light. No, it's a fun game if you haven't played it. A lot of fun, actually. I spent some time with that today.
Sweet.
Next week, not sure. We are so close to announcing our new game. Hooray!
Oh, yes.
We have an official name for it, so just a matter of days. Probably.
It is very cool. I'll throw that out.
We've been playing around the.
I mean, I hate to spoiler it, but it's really cool.
Other than that, send us an email, community@toystudio.com if you have questions. Follow us on Twitter @ToyStudioGames. We're also on Facebook, facebook.com/ToyStudioGames. We're also on Google Plus too, but I'm not sure what to think of that.
Does anyone use Google Plus anymore?
I don't know. If you can
can't
find
be over already.
That's true.
If you can find us on Google Plus, say hi. I don't know what to do there. Anyway, I'm Ryan.
I'm Rob.
Q1.
Thanks for listening.